Hi everyone and welcome to Louise Singleton Creations. In today's video I'm going to be trying out Hi-Build Artwork Resin from Elichem Resins. This resin is the thickest, most gloopy and controllable available on the market, and it's perfect for blob art, dot art, geode art and doming. But most importantly, it's so much fun. If you would like to see it in action, stay tuned and enjoy the video. The first thing you'll notice about Elichem's Hi-Build resin is that it comes in tubs instead of bottles. That might seem unusual for an artwork resin, but the reason is it's so thick and gloopy it would be very difficult to pour it out of a regular bottle. If you want quite a large amount of it, you can pour it from the tub, but like I say, it will be a large amount that comes out. You don't have very good control over it because it's so thick. That's why I'm scooping it out with a spoon. And since doing this, I have actually looked on the Elichem website, and it does mention if it's too thick and gloopy for measuring out, you can pre-warm the tubs first, which we all know, don't we? With epoxy resin you can pre-warm the tubs and it makes it runnier, and you know it lowers the viscosity. And for this I thought, well, I want it to be really thick, so maybe it wouldn't be a good idea to pre-warm it. But then I read it on the website and I thought, hang on a minute, if you pre-warm both of the tubs, pour out what you need into a separate cup, well, measure out what you need into two separate cups, don't mix it, and then allow it to get back to room temperature and thicken up again, then it'll be all right, won't it? And then you can mix it and you've got accurate amounts. I used a small silicone measuring jug to measure mine, and it wasn't really that accurate because the resin wasn't laying flat, so it was really hard to get the level. So yeah, I would recommend pre-warming the tubs before measuring it out into separate pots. Elichem's Hi-Build resin is a 1:1 mixing ratio by volume. You can measure it by weight, which might actually be easier, but for that you need to have 100 parts resin to 90 parts hardener. It has a 15 to 20 minutes working time, so don't mix up too much in one go if you're going to be doing something detailed like I am in this video. It will be touch dry in 2 to 3 hours, and you can apply a second layer after about 20 minutes. So this isn't available in a clear option. It will always be opaque. That's just part of its properties. It's the way it's been made, and I don't think there's any way around that. So you will need to pigment it. I've used a range of things here. For the first one, I've just added some liquid pigment for the white. I used metallic pigment powder for the second one, and I chose a nice gold for that. And for the third, I used some beautiful blue hyacinth coloured mica powder. That's from Laura's Art Corner. It's my favourite colour. Just look at it in the pot. It just looks beautiful. So yeah, I had 3 different kinds of pigment there and they all worked well. As far as adding pigments go, you can just treat it just like you would treat your regular epoxy resin. With that out of the way, it was time to have some fun experimenting. Here I had a lid with some Aquacast eco resin in there, and when I'd done it I'd run out of Aquacast, so it had been left there half filled, and it was just waiting for some spare resin when I did a resin project and had some left over. But then when I started working with this, I thought, hang on a minute, that might be the perfect thing for my practice. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just getting the feel of it at the moment. You will find that you need to get the feel of how it comes out of the, how it drips, how it kind of behaves. And it took me a while to get it just right. As you can see there, that's not a perfect round. And I did find it does work best if you use some kind of tool. I just used a coffee stirring stick. So yeah, try out different things, just experiment with it like I'm doing here. I kept on going with all the different colours, and as you can see, I'm starting to get much better control over it. But the thing is, the longer you leave it, the thicker it's going to get, and the more differently it will behave as you're pouring it. So you will find that it takes a long time to do this kind of artwork, and I would suggest mixing it in very small amounts because you're taking your time with it and it will start to thicken up while you're using it in about 15 to 20 minutes. So don't mix more than you've got time to work with. So because I wasn't too worried how this practice one turned out, I just really went to town with, seeing how it would behave in different circumstances. Here I'm pouring it all close together. All those little circles and or domes, you might want to call them, are close together just because I wanted to see what would happen when they touch each other. I didn't know if they would completely merge or just kind of still maintain their dome-like quality, even touching one another. And it was kind of a little bit of both. I think it still worked fine, and I was pleased I tried it out because I did prefer it when they weren't touching. And so I learned something from my practice with that. And another thing that I learned was you can add one dome on top of another or one colour on top of another. And if you do it like I was just doing it without letting it cure at all, they will merge together. It won't look like one dome on top of another. It will all become one multicoloured dome. If you want it to look like there's one separate splodge of resin on top of another, it's best to leave your first lot to cure before you add the second, and then you're going to get your doming one on top of another. At this point, I was very impressed with it and I was loving the way it stayed where you put it. There was no movement, and I thought that was quite amazing. But very quickly, I realised there was something else that I really hadn't thought about and wasn't really expecting, and that is that the colours don't merge at all. They keep completely separate. For instance, blue is a very, very highly pigmented colour, but next to the white you don't find traces of blue kind of merging into the white. They stay completely separate, and that really did impress me. And I know I've just spent all that time pouring very careful domes, but there was something else I really needed to try out in my practice, and that is to use my micro brush to pull it through all the domes to see how well it works when you're trying to make patterns. As you can see here, it was kind of reaching the end of its workability. It was getting very thick. So yeah, I decided to have a go at making a pattern at this point. Unfortunately, my camera positioning was really wrong to really capture much of this. But you get the idea, don't you? And you can see how fun it is to do this. I could do that all day, honestly. I really could. And here it is the next day after it was cured. And one thing I will mention, you probably already realise, it's going to be obvious, but it's Hi-Build resin. It's supposed to keep its shape. So it's not going to self-level like regular epoxy would. And the top surface was kind of bumpy. That's why I'm just adding a little bit of clear resin to smooth out the top. After having my practice, I felt confident enough to have a go on a canvas. Even though I'm saying that, it wouldn't be the end of the world if it didn't work out well, because this canvas was no loss to anybody. It had a big black mark on the front, which is probably why it had been sitting in my craft room unused. And you can even see that the pink acrylic paint isn't covering it, but it doesn't matter because the Hi-Build resin will say goodbye to that black mark. Nothing's going to show through the resin dome that I'm going to put on there. This time I've spared you the mixing and measuring of the resin and gone straight to adding the pigment. Now this first one that you can see was a mistake. I decided to add some of the fairy dust. It's like a very fine sparkly glass, which is one of my favourite additions for resin, but not in this case. I very quickly noticed it was a mistake because it made it look really gritty, and you don't want your domes to look gritty. So I ended up not using that one. Ignore that. In the end, I went for a green, a pink, and an interference pink. That's the white one. It's got like a pink tone to it. And the reason for my choices were because I'm making this for my granddaughter. They're moving house. They're actually going to be my neighbours, which is quite exciting. And I thought she would probably go for pink in her bedroom. But you know what kids are like. They change their favourite colour every 5 minutes. So there's a chance she won't even like this. But I thought it would be nice for her to have a picture for her bedroom wall. Before I started on my canvas, I just wanted to demonstrate an option that you have with this, which I actually think is a very good option. Here I have a sheet of acetate and I'm just making my domes on that rather than directly on my canvas. That is a way you can do it. You can make them all in advance, let them cure, and then glue them onto the surface that you're using. And that way you don't get domes that get too close to each other and merge slightly together like I was talking about before. They will all be completely separate because they've cured separately. So that was a really interesting experiment to try out, and I was glad I did that. However, I wanted to add my resin directly to the canvas because I wanted to get the effect of it running down the edges. So I've put the specific product information on the screen just in case you wanted to read it. I could read it out to you if I wanted, but yeah. I'll leave it there for you and you can pause it if you want to read through it. Let's see the canvas get completed. And here it is, my second attempt with Hi-Build Resin. It's kind of crazy, but kind of cool at the same time, and very touchy-feely. You just want to run your fingers across it. Next time I use it, I intend to have a go at doing one level at a time, letting it cure for a while, and then adding the next so that I can build up the layers. All that was left to do for this particular one was to get rid of the drips off the back, and for that I used my Dremel. Obviously, you will need to do that outside and you'll need to wear a mask as well. But as if by magic, I've missed that out. Now it is completely finished and tidied up. So for this piece of artwork, I probably went for the most common technique of making the dots and raising them up like I did. But that's not the only thing you can do with it. The Hi-Build Resin also works wonderfully at forming barriers, so if you're interested in making geode art and you don't want all your colours running into each other, you can pour your shapes, your barriers with the Hi-Build Resin, and without it even curing, you can then add your other colours of regular resin next to it, and it works really well. So that's maybe another video. But look, here are the ones that I did on the acetate. So if you wanted to, you could fill a canvas up with those as well and do it that way like I mentioned before. And I quite like the idea of doing it that way. But yeah, that's another option. I do love working with these wooden canvases because they're easy to clean up on the back with the sander, and yeah, look how lovely that is on the back. And also these don't sag, which makes them perfect for the heavy weight you get with resin. I think I got these off Amazon. Just do a search for wooden canvas. Overall, Elichem's Hi-Build Resin gets the thumbs up from me. It does take a little bit of practicing, but the results are awesome. I think you might agree. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you would like to, and I will see you again next time. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.